Everyone experiences dukkha or discomfort. And on this season of the Death Dhamma podcast, we have really focused on that idea of suffering. We have listened to individuals whose work is focused on helping us with our suffering, and we have considered our own role. How might we help ourselves and others? What's left? Well, probably plenty. But now it is time to wrap up season 4. Today, some thoughts before we go. Hi, it's Margaret Meloni, and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. I'm a Buddhist practitioner out here in the world, having experienced the loss of my loved ones and knowing how much my Buddhist practice helped me on my grief journey. And now, together we have this safe space to discuss death, dying, grief, and the Buddhist teachings that help us really understand attachment, impermanence, being compassionate, being death ready, and what it means to live a life so that we can have a peaceful death. Yep, it's a big topic, and we're going to take it on together. Let's go. There was a time when I went with Venerable De Hong to visit one of our California state prisons. Venerable D is the primary resource in the Engaged Buddhist Alliance, a nonprofit we co-founded with another colleague. If his name sounds familiar, it's because he has been a guest on this podcast. You can find him in season 3 in an episode, Child Trauma and Aversion to Self, and in season 1, Losing an Abusive Parent versus Losing a Loving Parent. When visiting these incarcerated men, the concept of suffering is so obvious. In many instances, there's a clear pattern: abuse, abandonment, addiction. I'm not an expert. I'm not saying that everyone serving time has had the same experience. I'm saying that in listening to this one specific group, I could identify these common themes. And these themes were all types of suffering, and this led these men to make decisions that brought about more suffering for themselves and for others. Being in prison is, of course, a form of suffering. And for those who are working on recognizing the harm they have caused, who are truly atoning, there's suffering in that process of taking ownership of their actions and doing the work to make changes. At this point, I would also like to make the observation that in our own discussions on suffering and helping to alleviate suffering, we have definitely covered abuse, abandonment, and addiction. We have had guests talk about disconnection from self and spirituality. We have had guests discuss experiences of abuse in this and previous lives. And we heard firsthand how addiction can turn you into a person you thought you would never be, one who steals and lies and only lives for the next high. Now, Venerable D spends several days each month visiting various prisons. Until March 2020, I went once a month to one specific location. At that time, we were combining mindfulness meditation with teachings from the Buddha. And because I come from a place, when I was speaking, I was definitely, and I'm aligned with Theravada Buddhism. So when it was my turn to lead a talk, I would draw from the Pali Canon, and invariably, I would rely on the 4 Noble Truths, especially to answer questions from men who might be new in the room, and also to answer questions from those who had been coming to our visits on a regular basis. To me, it was about starting with the basics, really building up that foundation. Yeah, I was repetitious, but so often we learn with repetition. And with so many of the skills we acquire in life, we start out with a basic structure, right? Some basic knowledge. And really being able to rely on this structure is what supports us. That's why the 4 Noble Truths are so foundational. But don't worry, I didn't lead the same discussion on the 4 Noble Truths every time I facilitated a discussion. But it would usually surface. It might be in the form of a man sharing that he was having a tough time and that he knew he was really experiencing suffering. It might be that another man shared how he restrained himself from yelling at another inmate because he stopped himself when he realized that that other man had his own suffering and that you don't always know what someone else is going through. Or it could be in the form of a man who was life without parole and learning and growing, knowing that he would probably die in prison, and yet he decided to become a mentor to others so that they might leave and have a life that did not involve returning to the prison system. A reminder that no matter our circumstances, we have the ability to help others with their sufferings. Sometimes the suffering showed up as a man listening to the teachings and sitting in meditation, cried as his memories and his emotions took over. And often when that happened, just as quickly as that crying surfaced, another man would offer up a hug or a kind word or a fist bump. Another reminder that no matter our circumstances, we have the ability to help others with their sufferings. Yes, if you want to see a microcosm of suffering, visit a prison. Well, they are prisoners. They committed crimes, and now they're paying for those crimes. Okay. I'm not suggesting that there should not be repercussions for breaking the law. I'm not saying that experiencing abuse, abandonment, and addiction makes it acceptable to join a gang and engage in drive-by shootings or to rob a store or other behaviors that landed them in prison. But until we learn the truth of suffering and gain release from suffering, we too are prisoners. In this moment, instead of going to the Poly Cannon, I go to the Eagles and the now classic hit Hotel California and this line: "We are all just prisoners here of our own device." As we wrap up this season, remember that the Buddha taught suffering and the release from suffering, and you have this practice and this lifetime to find freedom. I've got books for you, starting with Carpooling with Death, How Living with Death Will Make You Stronger, Wiser, and Fearless, the book that got me going and helped me to discuss going through the death of my loved ones, followed by Sitting with Death, Buddhist insights to help you face your fears and live a peaceful life, based on Season 1 of the Death Dhamma podcast, and just recently, Enlightenment Unleashed, how your pet can lead you to spiritual transformation, because during our lifetime, we may see the rising and ceasing of many pets, and we love them like they are our family. Find these on Amazon.com or come see me at MargaretMeloni.com. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma podcast with your host, Margaret Meloni. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on MargaretMeloni.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.